I found out I was switched at birth. Part 1. Hook plus Childhood plus DNA Test. Hi, my name is Lily, and for 17 years, I believed I had the perfect family. Then one ordinary hospital visit changed everything. A doctor looked at my parents, stared at a DNA test report for what felt like forever, and finally asked a question that made the entire room fall silent. Are you absolutely sure she's your biological daughter? At first, we laughed. My dad even joked, maybe you mixed up the test results. The doctor didn't smile. Instead, he quietly suggested another DNA test. A week later, my entire world fell apart. The results confirmed that neither of my parents shared any biological relationship with me. I wasn't adopted. I hadn't been abandoned. I had been switched with another baby just hours after I was born. Somewhere out there, another girl had been living the life that was supposed to be mine. And this is how I found out that a single mistake could change two families forever. Growing up, I always felt a little different from everyone in my family. My dad was over 6 feet tall with curly brown hair. My mom had bright green eyes. My older brother looked exactly like both of them. Then there was me. I had straight black hair, dark brown eyes, and tan skin. Whenever relatives visited, someone would always laugh and say, Lily must have inherited her looks from a very distant ancestor. Everyone laughed. So did I. But deep inside, I wondered why I never looked like anyone. It wasn't just my appearance. I loved painting. Everyone else in my family loved sports. I hated camping. They planned outdoor trips every summer. I preferred reading mystery novels while they watched football together. Sometimes I joked that maybe I had been born into the wrong family. I had no idea how true that joke actually was. Despite our differences, my parents loved me more than anything. My mom never missed a school performance. My dad taught me how to ride a bicycle, even though I crashed into every tree in our neighborhood. When I failed my driving test, he hugged me and said, nobody gets everything right the first time. To me, they were perfect parents. That's why what happened next hurt so much. Everything began because my brother needed surgery. The doctors asked close family members to take blood tests in case a transfusion became necessary. It was supposed to be routine. We all went to the hospital together on a rainy Thursday morning. None of us imagined we would leave with our lives completely changed. A few days later, the hospital called and asked all 4 of us to come back. The nurse sounded nervous. When we arrived, a genetic specialist was waiting for us. She spread several documents across her desk and looked at my parents with a serious expression. There appears to be a problem with the genetic compatibility results, she explained. Dad frowned. What kind of problem? The doctor hesitated. Your daughter does not genetically match either of you. Silence. Mom laughed nervously. That has to be impossible. The doctor nodded. That's why we repeated the test twice. My stomach tightened. Nobody spoke. Nobody even breathed. Finally, my dad whispered, run it again. They did. Twice. Every result was exactly the same. I wasn't biologically related to either of my parents. My mom burst into tears. Dad stood completely still, staring at the papers as if they belonged to someone else. I wanted to believe there had been another mistake. But deep inside, I already knew this time the results were real. The hospital immediately opened an investigation. They asked for my birth records, fingerprints, and old hospital documents dating back 17 years. None of us understood why. Not yet. 3 days later, the hospital called again. This time, they asked us to come in immediately. As we walked into the conference room, I noticed several administrators, 2 lawyers, and a woman I had never seen before. She looked like she had been crying for hours. The hospital director took a deep breath before speaking. 17 years ago, he said softly, 2 baby girls were born within 8 minutes of each other. And that's when my life changed forever. Part 2. The investigation plus meeting my biological family. The hospital director took a deep breath before continuing. 17 years ago, 2 baby girls were born just 8 minutes apart. They were delivered on the same floor, weighed almost exactly the same, and were wrapped in identical pink blankets. During a shift change, a nurse accidentally placed the babies in the wrong bassinets. I stared at him, unable to process what he had just said. Are you saying, I was switched with another baby? I whispered. He slowly nodded. We believe so. And based on our investigation, we've identified the other family. The room fell silent again. My mom squeezed my hand so tightly it almost hurt. Her eyes were swollen from crying, but she refused to let go. My dad sat beside her, staring at the table with a blank expression. He looked like a man trying to wake up from a nightmare. The hospital explained that the other family lived about 200 miles away in a small town. They had also raised a 17-year-old daughter who wasn't biologically theirs. Just like me, neither family had ever suspected anything. The hospital had already contacted them. They had received the exact same shocking news only a few hours earlier. For the first time in my life, I realized there was another girl somewhere in the world who shared my DNA. A girl who had grown up celebrating my birthdays. A girl who had slept in the bedroom that should have been mine. A girl who had lived the life I never knew existed. The thought made my stomach twist. A week later, both families agreed to meet. I barely slept the night before. I kept wondering what she looked like. Did she have my smile? My laugh? Did she like painting the way I did? Or were we complete strangers connected only by blood? The meeting was arranged in a private conference room at the hospital. When we arrived, another family was already there. The moment I walked through the door, everyone stood up. Then I saw her. She looked exactly like the people standing beside her. The woman had the same dark eyes as mine. The man had the same smile I saw every morning in my mirror. And the girl, she had my parents' curly brown hair. Their green eyes. Even her laugh sounded like my mother's. It felt like someone had split my life into two different worlds. Nobody spoke for nearly a minute. Then the woman across the room burst into tears. She covered her mouth with both hands before slowly walking toward me. "You," she whispered, "you look just like I did when I was your age." Before I could respond, she wrapped her arms around me. She cried so hard that her shoulders shook. I stood completely frozen. I didn't know whether I should hug her back. She was my biological mother. But she wasn't my mom. At least, not the one I remembered. Finally, I gently hugged her. She whispered through her tears, "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't know." I realized she wasn't apologizing for switching us. She was apologizing for missing 17 years of my life. Across the room, something even more heartbreaking was happening. The other girl, her name was Emma, was hugging the woman who had raised me. My mom. Both of them were crying. Watching them together hurt more than I expected. Emma looked at my parents with the same warmth I had always known. She called them Mom and Dad without thinking. Just as naturally as I had done all my life. For the first time, I understood that we weren't the only victims. Everyone in that room had lost something. And everyone had something to gain. But nobody knew how to make those pieces fit together. The rest of the afternoon felt awkward. We shared old baby photos, school pictures, family vacations, birthday videos. It was like watching someone else live my life. There was one video of Emma blowing out candles at her 10th birthday party. Behind her, hanging on the wall, was the exact unicorn banner my mom had told me she'd picked out years ago. Only now I realized, she hadn't picked it out for me. She had picked it out for the baby she believed was her daughter. Another video showed me celebrating Christmas with the family who had raised me. Across town, my biological parents were probably opening presents with Emma at that exact same moment. Two families, two daughters, two completely different lives, all because of one mistake. As the meeting came to an end, the hospital offered counseling and financial compensation. Lawyers discussed lawsuits. Administrators apologized over and over again. But none of that mattered. No amount of money could give anyone back 17 years. Before we left, Emma walked over to me. She smiled nervously. "This is weird, isn't it?" I laughed for the first time in weeks. "The weirdest thing that's ever happened to me." She looked at me for a moment before saying something that stayed with me forever. "I don't think either of us stole the other's life. I think we were just given different ones." I nodded, but deep inside, I wasn't sure I believed her. Not yet. Because I still had one impossible question I couldn't answer. If I had to choose, which family was really mine? Part 3. Living between two families. After that first meeting, nothing in my life felt normal anymore. For 17 years, I had known exactly where I belonged. I knew who my parents were, which room was mine, and what family traditions we followed every Christmas. Then, almost overnight, everything became uncertain. The hospital encouraged both families to take things slowly. They arranged counseling sessions and suggested that we spend time getting to know one another instead of making any life-changing decisions. Everyone agreed, but that didn't make it any easier. The following weekend, my biological parents invited me to their home for dinner. I was nervous the entire drive. My mom, the woman who had raised me, sat beside me in complete silence. She smiled every now and then, but I could tell she was trying not to cry. Before I got out of the car, she gently held my hand. "You don't have to do anything you're uncomfortable with," she said softly. I nodded, but I wasn't even sure what comfortable meant anymore. When I walked into my biological family's house, I felt like a guest visiting strangers. The house smelled like fresh bread and cinnamon. Family photos covered every wall. There were pictures of birthdays, vacations, school graduations, and holidays. In almost every photograph, Emma stood smiling between the two people who were actually my biological parents. I couldn't stop staring at those pictures. That could have been me. My biological mother noticed where I was looking. "We've kept every memory," she whispered. "We just didn't know we were making them with the wrong daughter." I didn't know how to respond. Were they really the wrong memories? Emma had laughed with them. She had cried with them. She had called them mom and dad for 17 years. Nothing about those moments felt fake. Dinner was awkward at first. Everyone tried too hard to be polite. My biological father asked about school. My biological mother wanted to know my favorite food. They asked about my hobbies, my dreams, and my plans after graduation, almost as if they were trying to catch up on 17 years in a single evening. Then something unexpected happened. My biological mother brought out an old photo album. Inside was a picture of her at 17. I froze. She looked almost exactly like me. The same dark eyes, the same smile, the same straight black hair. For the first time in my life, I understood where my face came from. It was comforting and heartbreaking. Over the next few months, both families spent more and more time together. Sometimes we had dinner at my house. Sometimes at Emma's. Birthdays were celebrated together. Even simple Sunday lunches became gatherings where 8 people sat around one table, trying to create a new version of what family meant. Emma and I slowly became friends. At first, we were awkward around each other. Neither of us knew what to say. Were we sisters? Friends? Strangers? Eventually, we stopped trying to define it. One afternoon, we went for coffee together. She laughed and said, "You know what's funny? We both hate mushrooms." I smiled. "And we both love mystery novels." She grinned. Maybe DNA really does matter. For a while, everything felt almost normal again. Almost. Then people at school found out. Someone had overheard my parents talking at a restaurant. Within days, the story spread across social media. "Girl switched at birth finally finds real family." Some students treated me like I was famous. Others whispered whenever I walked past. The questions never stopped. "So, who are your real parents? Which family are you going to choose? Are you moving away?" I hated that question, because I didn't have an answer. Every time someone asked who my real parents were, I felt guilty. If I said my biological parents, it felt like I was betraying the people who had raised me. If I said the parents who raised me, it felt like I was rejecting the people who had spent 17 years unknowingly missing their own daughter. No matter how I answered, someone got hurt. The hardest moment came a few weeks later. My biological mother invited me to celebrate my 18th birthday with them. That same day, my parents had already planned a surprise party at home. Neither family knew about the other's plans. I stared at both invitations lying on my desk. For the first time in my life, I wished I could split myself into 2 people. One daughter for each family. Instead, I had to choose. And no matter what I decided, someone's heart was going to break. Part 4. The biggest conflict. I ended up spending the first half of my 18th birthday with my biological family and the second half with the parents who had raised me. I thought it was the fairest solution. Instead, it made everything worse. When I arrived at my biological parents' house that morning, they had decorated the entire living room with balloons and photos they had collected from the hospital and from me over the past few months. They had even baked my favorite chocolate cake after asking Emma what desserts I liked. Everyone smiled when I walked in, but I couldn't ignore the empty feeling inside me. It was obvious they were trying to make up for 18 birthdays they had missed. I appreciated every effort they made, but deep down, everything still felt unfamiliar. That afternoon, I rushed home. The moment I opened the front door, my parents shouted, "Surprise!" My friends, neighbors, grandparents, and cousins were all there waiting for me. The walls were covered with photos from every stage of my childhood. My dad had spent hours putting together a slideshow of old family videos, and my mom had cooked every dish I loved. As everyone sang, "Happy Birthday," I suddenly realized something. Every memory in that room was real. Every scraped knee, every bedtime story, every hug after a bad day. None of those moments had anything to do with DNA. I smiled through the celebration, but later that night, I cried myself to sleep. I felt like I was living 2 different lives, and no matter where I went, I always felt guilty for leaving someone behind. The situation became even more complicated when the media got involved. The hospital had officially admitted responsibility for the switch, and the story quickly spread across television, newspapers, and social media. Reporters camped outside both houses. Headlines called us, the switched at birth families. People online argued about what we should do. Some said I should move in with my biological parents immediately because blood is blood. Others insisted that the people who raised me were my only real family. Thousands of strangers debated my future as if I weren't even a real person. One afternoon, a reporter stopped me outside school. "Lily, who do you consider your real mother?" I froze. There was no right answer. No matter what I said, someone would get hurt. I pushed past the cameras without saying a word. That night, I deleted every social media account I had. I didn't want the world deciding my life for me. A few weeks later, another problem appeared. The hospital's lawyers arranged a meeting to discuss compensation. They offered both families a substantial settlement. The amount was large enough to change anyone's life. Almost immediately, rumors began to spread. People accused both families of caring more about the money than about us. Some even claimed that one family was trying to take back the better daughter. The comments were cruel. They didn't know us. They didn't know that every single person involved wished none of this had ever happened. Then came the worst day of all. One evening, I accidentally overheard my biological parents talking after dinner. They didn't know I was standing in the hallway. My biological mother was crying. "I don't want to lose her again," she whispered. "We've already missed 18 years. My biological father sighed. "What if she never wants to live with us?" Those words stayed with me. Later that same night, after returning home, I overheard another conversation. This time, it was between the parents who had raised me. My mom's voice trembled. "What if she decides to leave?" Dad wrapped his arms around her. "If that's what makes Lily happy, we'll support her." But his own voice cracked. "I don't know how to let her go." I stood outside their bedroom door, tears running down my face. For the first time, I understood that every parent in this story was afraid of the exact same thing. Not losing a daughter they had just found, but losing a daughter they loved. The pressure became unbearable. Everyone expected me to make a decision. The lawyers, the counselors, my friends, even complete strangers online. They all wanted to know one thing. Which family would I choose? I spent weeks trying to answer that question. I made lists of pros and cons. I imagined moving away. I imagined staying. Neither choice felt right. Finally, one rainy afternoon, I packed a small suitcase. I left a handwritten note on my bed. "I need some time to figure out who I am." Then I walked out of the house without telling anyone where I was going. For the first time since discovering the truth, I wasn't running toward either family. I was running away from both. I believed leaving would solve everything. I had no idea that my decision was about to reveal the biggest truth of all. Part 5. Final twist plus realization. I spent 2 days alone in a small lakeside cabin that belonged to my uncle. I turned off my phone, ignored every message, and tried to imagine what my life would look like if none of this had ever happened. For the first time in weeks, everything was quiet. No reporters, no lawyers, no questions, just me. I thought that being alone would help me decide which family I belonged to. Instead, it made me realize something I had been avoiding all along. I wasn't trying to choose between two families. I was trying to choose between love and biology. And that wasn't a choice anyone should ever have to make. On the second evening, I finally turned my phone back on. More than 200 missed calls. Dozens of text messages. Some were from my biological parents. Some were from the parents who had raised me. But one message caught my attention. It was from Emma. "Please come back. Everyone is looking for you. Your moms haven't stopped crying." Your moms. Not your mom. Your moms. For some reason, those two words hit me harder than anything else. I suddenly realized something. Emma had never asked me to choose. Neither had either family. The only person forcing that impossible decision was me. When I returned home the next morning, both families were already there. The moment they saw me, everyone rushed toward me at once. My mom hugged me first. Then my biological mother. My dad wrapped his arms around all of us before anyone could say a word. Everyone was crying. No one asked where I had been. No one yelled. No one blamed me. They were simply relieved that I was safe. After we all calmed down, I looked around the room. 8 people, 2 fathers, 2 mothers, 1 brother, Emma, and me. For weeks, I had believed that someone had to lose. That one family had to win while the other had to let go. But standing there, I finally understood the truth. Nobody wanted to replace anyone. My biological parents didn't want to erase the people who had raised me. My parents didn't want to erase the people who had given me life. They all loved me, in different ways, for different reasons, but the love was equally real. Then the hospital director arrived with one final piece of information. He apologized again for everything that had happened. Before leaving, he handed both families a sealed envelope. Inside were copies of the original hospital records. One photograph slipped onto the table. It showed two exhausted mothers lying in neighboring hospital beds. Between them were two tiny newborn girls. The nurse had accidentally placed the babies in the wrong bassinets before taking the picture. For 17 years, that photograph had been sitting in a hospital archive. No one had noticed the mistake. I stared at the image for a long time. Then I noticed something that made me smile through my tears. Both mothers were looking at the babies with exactly the same expression. Pure love. They couldn't tell which child was biologically theirs. Because in that moment, it didn't matter. They were simply mothers holding babies they believed were their own. That photograph changed everything for me. I finally understood that love had existed from the very first day. It had simply found the wrong crib. But it had never found the wrong child. A few weeks later, the hospital officially offered a financial settlement to both families. Everyone expected a long legal battle. Instead, something unexpected happened. Both families accepted the settlement on one condition. Part of the money would be used to create a program that improved newborn identification procedures at local hospitals, helping prevent other families from experiencing the same heartbreak. When the hospital administrators agreed, both of my mothers looked at each other and smiled. For the first time since all of this began, I saw peace in their eyes. At that moment, I finally realized my biggest mistake. For months, I had believed that blood alone defined family. I thought I had to leave one family behind in order to embrace the other. But I was wrong. The people who gave me life would always be my biological parents. The people who stayed awake when I was sick, celebrated every birthday, cheered at every school play, and loved me through every stage of my childhood would always be my parents too. Love had never been divided. It had simply grown bigger. And that was the greatest twist of all. Part 6. Lesson plus present day plus future. Today, it's been 3 years since I discovered I had been switched at birth. People still ask me the same question. So, which family did you choose? I always smile before answering. I didn't choose. I was lucky enough to keep both. That answer usually surprises people. Maybe because they expect every story to have winners and losers. But real life isn't always like that. Sometimes, the happiest ending isn't about replacing what was lost. It's about making room for something new. These days, I still live with the parents who raised me while I attend college nearby. They're the ones who stayed up all night helping me study for exams, celebrated every graduation, and still call me every evening just to ask if I've eaten dinner. They're still mom and dad. Nothing about that has changed. Every Sunday, I have dinner with my biological parents. At first, those dinners felt awkward. Now they feel natural. My biological mother has finally stopped apologizing for the years we lost. She knows it wasn't her fault. My biological father and I have discovered that we share the same sense of humor. We laugh at the same terrible jokes, love the same old movies, and somehow always order the same thing at restaurants. Sometimes I catch myself smiling because I finally understand where those little parts of me came from. Emma and I have become incredibly close. People often ask if we feel jealous of each other. The truth is, we did at first. I envied the childhood she had with my parents. She envied the life I had with hers. But eventually, we realized that jealousy couldn't change the past. Instead, we decided to become sisters. Not because of DNA. Not because of paperwork. But because we chose to be there for each other. We celebrate birthdays together now. We go shopping, watch movies, and argue over silly things just like real sisters do. Maybe that's because we are. Just not in the way people usually expect. The hospital also kept its promise. Using part of the settlement money, it introduced new identification procedures for every newborn baby. Electronic wristbands, multiple identity checks, digital records. The nurses told us they hoped no family would ever experience what ours had gone through. Knowing that our story helped protect future children gave all of us a sense of peace. If even one family is spared the heartbreak we experienced, then something good came out of all this pain. Looking back, I realize my biggest mistake wasn't believing that blood mattered. Blood does matter. It tells us where we come from. It explains the face we see in the mirror, the color of our eyes, and sometimes even the talents we inherit. But blood alone doesn't build a family. Love does. The people who comfort you when you're scared. The ones who cheer the loudest at your school plays. The ones who hold your hand through heartbreak. The ones who stay. Those are the people who become your family, no matter what your DNA says. For a long time, I thought I had lost my identity. Now I know I didn't lose it. I found a bigger one. Instead of having one family, I was blessed with two. Instead of losing a sister, I gained one. Instead of carrying anger for a mistake that happened before I could even open my eyes, I chose forgiveness. And that decision changed my life far more than the hospital's mistake ever did. If you're watching this and you're struggling with something that feels impossible, I want you to remember one thing. Sometimes life changes because of choices we make. Sometimes it changes because of mistakes made by other people. We can't control either of those things. But we can always choose how we move forward. For me, moving forward meant accepting that love isn't something that gets divided. The more people who truly care about you, the more love there is. It doesn't become smaller, it grows. So yes, I was switched at birth. Yes, I spent 17 years living with the wrong biological family. But I don't think I lived the wrong life. Every memory I made shaped the person I am today. Every hug, every birthday, every lesson, every tear, they all mattered. I wouldn't erase a single one of them. Because in the end, I didn't just find my biological family. I found a new understanding of what family really means. And if my story can help even one person appreciate the people who love them, then maybe that terrible mistake from 17 years ago wasn't the end of my story. Maybe, it was just the beginning.